I'm going to call this special meeting to order. Would you rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Bell.
Here.
Trustee Brewer.
Here.
Trustee Grant.
Here.
Trustee Jazinski. Trustee Williams.
Here.
Trustee Todd. Here.
Okay. Next item is a resolution approving the retention of Skitch LLP for forensic audit services in the village of Sauk Village. The resolution states, whereas the village of Sauk Village, state of Illinois, is a duly organized and existing municipality and unit of local government created under provisions of the laws of the state of Illinois and is operating under the provisions of the Illinois Municipal Code and all laws are mandatory thereof and supplementary thereunto with... Yeah, I'm just going to read this page because this is brand new order. Full powers to enact ordinances and adopt resolutions for the benefit of the residents of the village. And whereas the village president, the board of trustees, and the village, together the corporate authorities, are committed to adopting policies necessary for the efficient operation of the village and the safeguarding of taxpayer funds. And whereas it is necessary and in the best interest of the village to retain Skitch LLC. Sickich LLC to conduct forensic auditing services for the village of Sauk Village. Now therefore be it resolved by the president and the board of trustees and the village of Sauk Village, of the village of Sauk Village, section 1, all the recitals here in before stated as contained in the preambles to this resolution are full, true, and correct, and are hereby by reference incorporated and made part of the resolutions as legislative findings. Section 2, the village administrator is hereby authorized and directed to execute an engagement agreement on behalf of the village of, the village and Sickich LLC to perform a forensic audit of the village finances for the 2017 through 2019 fiscal years, subject to amendments as may be approved by the village administrator or corporate authorities. The forensic audit shall include a review of the Sauk Village financial policies, procedures, including but not limited to accounts receivable and payable, purchasing, payroll, timekeeping, employee reimbursement, treasury, utility bill collection, TIF expenditures, grant expenditures, and compliance and fund transfers. The forensic audit shall test selected transactions, map current processes, analyze employee roles and responsibilities, and provide a report that details its investigative activities and identifies process gaps and deficiencies. The terms and conditions of engaging Skitch to perform a forensic audit on behalf of the village is contained in their Sickich service and fees attached. Everything else is just safely filling. So at this time, I will accept a motion to accept this ordinance where it names Sickich.
Second.
Moved by trustee Brewer, second by trustee Williams. Any questions?
Yes. So, a comment and question. So, even back when we first discussed getting a forensic audit, I was never in favor of spending the amount of money that I think it's going to take to do this audit for this time period. I think there were some estimates out there of like over $100,000. So I'm still not a fan of that. Also, I guess my question to the board would be, so I think we're going to use the cash reserve fund for this, and are we going to pay this back? So that's one of the questions. And then also, what if there's nothing found? What if there is no fraud or mismanagement or anything that's illegal going on. I mean, did we just spend over 100 grand for no reason? To me, that doesn't make sense. So there's just a few of the questions that I have. So are we going to pay this money back? And what if we don't find anything? What are the repercussions for just charging the taxpayers over $100,000 for services that were not really needed?
Anybody on the board like to answer that?
I'd like to chime in on that. I can't give definitive answers. I can't say I'm disappointed that the interim finance director is not here to present this resolution and this contract for Sickage, since he's the person we've been discussing this entire process with. I do see that the scope of what the forensic auditors will be looking for is included in the resolution, and I'm glad that it was read in its entirety pretty much, so that from now on we should read all of the resolutions and ordinances in their entirety so people know what we're discussing before we approve it. I think that's a great idea to continue that practice. I do see that in absence of the finance director, I would like to say that somebody keeps tossing the word fraud around, and it's not the trustees who started the word fraud. The finance director came to the board and made a recommendation that a forensic audit was needed. It was his opinion because of the fact that the finances are, I can't remember the exact words he used, but I think he said they were in shambles. And he said that we have a tornado getting ready to hit Sauk Village. And that in itself was enough to say to the trustees, we have to agree with the interim finance director. Also, the accounting practices have been called to question for many years, not just these years that are questioned in this resolution, but for many years, our accounting practices, through our regular audits, we get dinged pretty much the same thing every year, and there's been no change. There's been no difference in the way we're doing the work in taking care of the residents' finances. So that alone, I'd like to see a copy of this resolution available to the public as soon as possible after it's passed, if and when it's passed. But I also have a question on Section 2. I know that the interim finance director asked all of us which company we wanted to go with, what years we wanted to start with, and how we wanted to pay for the reserves. I never saw the final bottom line of what everybody said. I know what I said. Okay, and my discussions with the interim finance director was that we were going to start with the year 2017-18, and then upon recommendation of the forensic auditors, we would either go up a year or back a year, depending on their findings and what they felt was best, the best course of action. This particular resolution addresses 2017 through 2019. That's 2 fiscal years. So I'd like to know if the board is aware that this resolution is for 2 years. I thought we were talking about 1 year. I have no problem going 2 years, but I was under the impression with my discussions with Mr. Finch that it would be 2017-18, and then depending which way we would go. So I'd like to have the other trustees weigh in on what their recommendations to Mr. Finch were.
So can I make a comment? So honestly, Mr. Finch presented this to us 2 weeks ago at a committee meeting, and he made a suggestion that we go with Sickage, but we never had a committee meeting to discuss. We just automatically voted on it, which is what we're doing now. So this was never discussed again by the board at another committee meeting, which should have taken place today. So I'm not sure why that didn't happen. So therefore, we never had a chance to discuss all of those issues that you just brought upon us.
And that's absolutely true, Trustee Grant, but what I understood that the meeting that we talked about was, here are the 3 recommendations. We basically reviewed the 3 recommendations at that committee meeting, and what Mr. Finch said was, submit me your recommendations, and we will move forward according to your recommendations. I, for one, submitted my recommendations. The last I heard from the interim finance director was we had a majority of the trustees in favor of Sickage. We all got the same contracts. We all were given the contracts at the same time to review. We discussed them at an open committee meeting, and we were told to give him our recommendations. We did, some of us, I went according to his recommendation because as the interim finance director, this was what he felt was best. And we talked about this at an open committee meeting. Personally, I don't think that we need to keep talking about it. And now is the time before we vote on this resolution. If there's any discussion to be held, we're here to discuss. That's what the meeting is all about.
I mean, this is not the time for a discussion. This is obviously time to take a vote. We should have discussed this last week because therefore we never informed the public of who did we decide to go with. Now, you might have sent it to him on an email. The public didn't know. I might have sent him on an email. The public didn't know. We never discussed this in front of the public and say, hey, we're going to go with Sickage, and the reasons are why, X, Y, and Z. Therefore, because he gave us 3 recommendations. Well, he gave us 3 different vendors to choose from. And I said, well, can we see a breakdown of how much each one might cost based on the proposal that they sent us? So therefore, he made a suggestion. We just went along with it without just kind of doing our due diligence on it. And I feel like that's the wrong thing to do.
Well, I don't think that that's exactly the way that it happened. I believe we did discuss it in a committee meeting, and I do believe that we had the opportunity to bring any questions forward, and I don't agree that this is not the time to have an open discussion. When you take a motion and a second in order to pass a resolution or ordinance, the next thing that the mayor asks is, do we have any questions? Is there any discussion? This is definitely the time to have discussion. If any trustee wanted to have a discussion regarding any of those companies, this would be the time to do it.
I disagree.
Before the ordinance is passed or the resolution, it is asked, do we have any discussion?
Right. So in my opinion, when that's asked, do we have any questions or comments, we should already be on the same page as what we're going to do.
Excuse me. Excuse me. Trustee Grant, let's wait till the clerk is done before you finish it. Could you wait till she's done before you can finish? Excuse me, my name is Trustee Williams.
Stop, okay. Madam Clerk, okay. You guys are still,
No, I just wanted to point out there, well, it's time to vote, it's time to vote. We should have already been on the same page, no questions. Like even you have a question right now, therefore that should have been asked and answered at the last committee meeting. Therefore we don't have any questions when it's time to go and take a vote. So that's just my 2 cents on it. That's all I really have.
And that's exactly why I brought it up at this time, because I read the resolution that was prepared from the attorney, and I'm bringing up at this time that we do need to discuss. And that's why I asked the opinions of the other trustees, what was the consensus? And I still say that the finance director should have been here so that he could have answered how the vote was taken, because we've already been FOIA'd by the clerk as to what situations, how this happened, how the vote was taken, and how the contracts came to be. And I think that if any of the other trustees want to weigh in, I'd be glad to hear what they have to say.
Trustee Williams, I understand what you're saying, but everything goes through the chair, so it's not a matter of. And the second thing, you said the trustees want to weigh in, or asking the trustees to weigh in. If that was the case, because I was told that we had to have a special meeting, and I agreed to call the special meeting because you wanted to pass this. But if it was going to be a discussion before it's passed, because I even asked why is it so important to pass this right now? Was there a deadline you tried to meet? Because we could have had this placed on the agenda for the committee meeting and further discussed it, and then came back. But I was told that if I didn't call for a special meeting, that a special meeting would be called in my stead. In other words, 3 trustees would make a recommendation to do that. So I have no problem with that part of it. But I'm asking, as far as, we're in the discussion right now, it's in question. And I'll ask any other trustees, do they have any other questions before we go forward with this? Are there any other questions about this particular? We're talking about the resolution that's before us, not what we're talking about another company doing this. That should have been thought about, because in this resolution it names this particular company, as if the board had agreed that this particular company would do the audit, the forensic audit. So when you do a resolution, it's put in there, and it's put, their name is put in there, as if the board has already agreed. And obviously, but now my next question is, did anyone reach out to the interim finance director for him to be here?
I didn't hear the last part.
Did anyone reach out to the interim finance director to be here for this meeting?
I've been trying to reach the interim finance director since Thursday, number one. Number two, I would assume in his position, since he was the one that put this together, that he would have been here to present it. He is the interim finance director.
Okay.
So yes, I would have assumed that he would be here, and I would assume that he would have done it at your direction.
Did you talk to someone that said he would be here? My question, because he's here, I mean, did you tell anyone besides him? Because you say you're assuming. Now you're assuming, now you're saying that he thought he would be here, he's not here to explain or whatever. So my question is, did you give him did you talk to the village administrator to ask him to be here, to ask him to come to this meeting? Or was there any notice given to, by any of the trustees for the village interim finance director to be here to answer these questions? Because I don't like to assume anything, and then we're taking it, and the person that you were mentioning, that person's name is not here to defend himself, and that's not good business. So I'll go back again, and I'll ask the question: is there a deadline, a reason why we have to pass it now, and instead of waiting on the answers that were given or the questions that you had, so you get some answers at that time? Is there a reason why this has to be passed tonight?
Have a comment.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Mayor, we have gone around and around in this circle concerning this matter. I've talked to Mr. Finch and a few other trustees individually, and there's no reason to delay the vote. One of the reasons we want a forensic audit is because we're not certain on our finances. Our finances are in disarray. We want some answers to what's going on, and there's no reason to keep putting this off. Mr. Finch is aware, because I'm quite sure he was, after talking to him, I should say, he was aware of the ordinance that was drafted, so he's aware of what's going on, and also the village administrator. So just to keep delaying this process for no reason doesn't make sense. We have a motion and a second on the floor, and in my opinion is that we should just go on with the vote.
Again, I asked the question.
That's
But you didn't answer the question. I asked the question: is there a reason why you have to? You ask all these questions. You mention these names that people are not here to answer the questions to you. So I guess you're willing to go ahead and move forward, even though you mentioned people's names that are here to answer the questions. You're willing to move forward and pass this without getting answers to the questions that you just had.
The finance director, Mr. Finch, I asked all the questions I needed to ask. I talked to the different trustees about the questions I needed to ask, and I made my decision. So there was some discussions among village officials about this particular resolution. So there's still no reason why we shouldn't just go on and vote on
Okay, so
the
but you said to ask a question. Is there a reason why it has to be done right now?
That's my answer to the question.
Is there a reason why it has to be done right now?
Is there a reason why it shouldn't be
I'm
answered
just
right now?
asking because the reason
We have
why.
a vote on the floor, a motion plus a second, and we're ready to vote.
The reason why people's names were mentioned. They don't have a chance to come and answer the questions that you have, so that's what I stated before. I'll say it again. Are you willing to move ahead and conclude this motion without the answers that were just asked of the
Village
question?
administrator standing right over there,
Where?
right behind that door. I just seen him. All I was gonna do was walk out.
Who was it?
I don't see it.
He was just.
Okay, well, I'm just asking the question. You said you wanted to talk to the.
Didn't Mr. Finch stand right there at that podium last week
No.
and stress the urgency in getting this done?
Then why is the question being asked of him? Why is the question?
His recommendation was this
Trustee,
kind of.
only thing I'm asking is why, if that's the case then why is there questions being asked about things that he said, and him not being here to answer is what I'm asking. That's all. I have no problem if you want to move forward with this without getting those questions answered. If the board wants to do that, that's fine. All I'm asking is their urgency, that's all. No one seems to have that answer, so if anybody else has any,
I'm gonna make a comment.
Flip switch.
That's a question. There you go. No, it's not that.
It's just no.
Here.
Go ahead.
I hear it.
It's
Go ahead,
on.
Linda.
Okay, I have a comment. Well, actually, it's a question to the board. After Mr. Finch came to us and presented the three companies, he then sent out an email, so I'm assuming that each one of the trustees got that email, and he stated, what do you want to see done? Which company, what years? He also wanted to know where you wanted the money taken from. Now, did each one of you get that and answer him?
Yes.
And then that's what I'm asking. So we've been going on and on about this forensic audit for at least, well, even last year it was discussed, that this needed to be done. And so I say that it needs to be, we need to move forward on this. This has been going on for a while with this forensic audit. Mr. Finch had asked what we wanted to see done. We gave him that information. He also needed a list of what we wanted to see done in the audit. Like, what did we want to see targeted first? And he was going to compile that list, and it was going to go, like, if 3 trustees wanted water fund investigated, as an example, then, okay, they're going to start with this. So I think any questions that should have been, knowing that this was in here on our packets on Friday, then if we had questions, then you go to Mr. Finch, or you can email him, you could call him. So that's just my comment. And that's how we came up with Sitchett. So I'm assuming that most of the board wanted Sickage.
Okay, well, I have no problem. I was just trying, do you have questions? So,
Mr. Mayor, I would still like, okay, okay.
is there a problem? Because if I'm gonna talk and have things said back and forth, then I'm gonna single you out, whoever it may be. We're trying to have a meeting. So if you feel that you want to do something other than that, please. I'm gonna respect each and every one of you, but I'm also gonna ask for the same respect. Trustee.
Thank you. I want to go back to, and I'm glad we're having this discussion because it does bear an opportunity to discuss the resolution that's before us. I want to go back to section 2, where it states that the forensic audit will be conducted for the 2017 through 2019 fiscal years. I, for one, was not given the impression that we were going to do 2 years at a time. I thought we were going to do 1 year, and then based on the recommendation of the forensic auditors, go back or forth. So this is why, Mr. Mayor, why I asked for the other trustees to weigh in, because I believe that we could still pass this resolution tonight by simply amending the resolution that's in front of us to include the years 2017 through 2018 fiscal year, unless it's the pleasure of the majority of the board to go forward with those 2 years. It was my understanding we were going through 1 year with Sickage, and the fact that the interim finance director thought that maybe he could work around this without even going to the reserves. So the money would come out of reserves if necessary. That was my understanding, and that's why I asked what the other trustees were aware of, because what is the consensus of the board? We need to know that. Like I said, we've already been FOIA'd by the village clerk as to how this vote was conducted and how the information had been disseminated through the trustees and how this is all coming to fruition. So I personally have no problem with stating that I contacted Mr. Finch by email and told him that I was willing to go with Sickage for the years 2017-18 and go along with whatever the forensic auditors felt was necessary as far as going forward or backward, and to take the money from the reserves or wherever he felt was necessary. That was what I said as one member of this board.
Okay. That being said, this is the first I've heard that you were going to take money out of the reserve. Because that I would have weighed in had I heard that, because that reserve money that we have in there should be used for other things other than this. that money was put in there for the sale of the land that we sold 2 years ago, in 2018. So now to take that money for a forensic audit, I did not know that we was going, I thought someone told me it was going to be used out of the line of credit. I did not know it was going to be used for the reserve. And I'm very adamant about that because that money should be used for other things in the village, not for a forensic audit. That's why I was wondering where the money was going to come from. But if you wanted to, so I guess the board wants to vote to use this reserve money for forensic audit, I do have a very, very, very big problem with that because we got other infrastructure, which we'll talk about later today. But right now, so the money that the forensic audit, and it was 2 years. I remember at the meeting that it was stated that it was a 2 year, not a 1 year, a 2 year, with the possibility of going further if need be. But it started off as a 2 year. That's what I heard. I never at one time did I hear 1 year. But now that we're going to use the reserve money that I fought for, I'm sorry, but this is really personal. I fought for, people were saying that it was we had too much traffic, the gas and wash was going to cause problems and everything, but we have it here, now the money's here, now we want to spend it on this. Yes, I am very, very adamant about that because I think that money that we got from there should be used for something other than a forensic audit. So that part, I'm not even including that in the motion, but the motion here is to get sickage. But to use the money for the reserve, and you can best use it for other infrastructure repairs, as like I stated before. I'm dead against that.
Mr. Mayor,
So,
can I address what you just said?
yes.
Okay, in speaking with the interim finance director and asking him how we were going to pay for the forensic audit, he suggested the reserves because we get more of a return we get less of a return from the reserves than we do have to pay for the interest on the line of credit. In other words, it would cost us more to borrow from the line of credit for the interest we would have to pay back than to take it from the reserves and lose whatever little interest we get from the reserves. Now, I've had several conversations with the interim finance director. I would think that if you wanted to know any information about this forensic audit or how we were going to pay for it, that it would have helped you to have a conversation with him. But in saying that, I know we've talked about several things, how many years, how much, where to get the money from, and what auditors. And in saying that, then if this resolution states those 2 years, those 2 fiscal years, 2017 through 2019, then I'm prepared to go ahead and vote yes on this resolution. And if and when we decide that the auditors think that we should go a different route, we can always amend this resolution. But yes, I am prepared to move forward based on the discussions that this board has had individually and with the finance director.
Mr. Mayor, I am getting ready to be totally out of order, and I'm not going anyplace. Don't
But if
shake
you know
your
you're
head
out
at
of
me.
order, why are you doing it?
Because it's really needed. Board of Trustees and Mr. Mayor, I have shared with you, Mr. Mayor, that the way this process took place, it is comparable to a behind-the-scenes transaction.
You're out of order, Madam Clerk.
You can't do that. You can't.
I am out of order. She's out of order. She's
It's a
accusing this board of doing behind the scenes.
behind-the-scenes transaction, and it is not something that this board should ever want to be a party to. If you guys gave individual votes to the interim finance director,
Individual
as you
recommendations.
stated
The clerk is out
that
of
you
order. She's
did.
making an accusation against the board.
As you just said that you did, you each communicated with him separately. You responded to his email. You've admitted that. I see
Yes, we
head
have.
shaking.
Yes, I admit that.
So, typically, when you respond, when you take a vote, however you do it, the village clerk usually knows about it so that it's recorded. Now you're sitting here asking all of these questions that, just as Trustee Grant stated, If you had had the committee meeting tonight, you would have answered or gotten answers to all of these questions, opposed to each one of you communicating with the director, interim director, individually, and now you're sitting here and you don't know who said what to whom. You don't have any calculation of who voted for what. You say that he asked you to give him a list. Did you get the list of everyone else's questions and concerns? No. But now you're sitting here, you want to rush through a vote. At the last committee meeting, for the record, and you will see it in your minutes next week, he presented 3 companies. Trustee Grant asked specifically that he come back, give a chart, a graph of what each one of those companies would have to offer in terms of the scope, and he also asked the price. And it was my understanding that he would have thought that at the next committee meeting, when you guys decide which company to go with collectively, he would have had that information so that he could make an informed decision. You're rushing through. You may have told him that this is the company, but if you did not have all of the facts that's needed, you're not making a wise decision. Now, the reason why I FOIA'd you guys' responses, and I still don't have it yet, is because I know even our process and our procedures on how we handle votes, special votes that are emergency votes, the responses all come to the village clerk, and the village clerk is the one who has been tasked with tallying and compiling all of your results. I've not seen anything. The only thing that I know, I communicated with the mayor and the interim director, and I shared with them the improprieties of you guys having a special meeting tonight to vote on this, because you never came back to your second committee meeting, which would have just been today. And all the conversations you all are having today, you all still could have had them today without pushing through for this ordinance and this company when there was not readiness on everyone's part. Yes, this is a special board meeting. At board meetings, we transact the business of the day. The business of the day was to deal with this ordinance and the company. That means you would have been ready. We would not have been talking on this issue for 30 minutes now because you're all not certain if it was supposed to be 1 year or if it was supposed to be 2 years or what happened to the information that others have requested. Oh, I didn't know that it was going to be funded from the reserve. I thought it was going to be from the line of credit. All of that type of stuff is supposed to be known to you trustees and the mayor before you come before a body to vote on something. It is time that you not try to push things so quickly so that you can say, oh, look at what we've accomplished, that you're not, as he said, doing, because I'm hurting your feelings because I'm telling you the truth.
You're out of order, Madam Clerk.
That's okay.
You're out of order, Madam Clerk.
You guys are out of order.
You're out of order, Madam
With this,
Clerk.
if you take this vote, you're out of order. And now I'm going to say the last thing that I'm going to say. Push through this vote if you want to. You will be reported to the authorities. It's ugly, it's nasty.
You are
but
really out of order.
That's
ma'am.
okay, baby, because we're gonna show
And that's how
that
you
you're
talk
out of it.
professionally at a board meeting?
Yes,
Hey,
that's because this is not professional. What you guys are doing right now is not professional.
Why don't you correct me?
It's not professional, it's not correct, it's not legal. I am finished.
Okay. Okay,
Then you all do this stuff again, I have to undo it.
No, you can't undo anything the board does.
talking about paper. I'm the only one that ended up doing all the paper.
Madam Clerk, you had your say, okay. I'll go back to what I just got to say. So this board wants to take that vote to do this? You know, that's why I asked the question, is there a rush? I've got 2 trustees that said that we talked about this. I don't know where that meeting happened. I wasn't there for it, but okay, you talked among yourselves. However you did it, that's fine. And you came up with the conclusion that this is what you want to do, okay. But for the record, there's nothing on there to say that, you know, especially that we're taking money from an entity. I would have weighed in on that one. So, but we're not voting on that one right now. We're voting on accepting this, basically you're voting to accept this contract from Sickage. And it is for roughly, basically, $100,000 a year, so that would be $200,000 plus cost overruns is basically what it's saying. So, and then also I was going to make mention that once they get involved in the forensic audit, that our other audit will be held up until they get through. We can't have an audit and a forensic audit at the same time. And our audit is due for 19. So, Madam Clerk, I'm just going to ask the question. You were basically giving the board your interpretation of things that were not done correctly. Is that what you was doing?
It was the factual
Okay.
knowledge
All right.
of what's not being done correctly. So therefore, you're being horrible.
Okay.
In response to the clerk, may I answer?
We're not gonna go back and forth.
No, the clerk has made some allegations against this board. Yes, she made allegations against this board.
Trustee.
So you're saying that I could not
Trustee.
rebuttal the clerk who was out of order?
Trustee.
Just wanted for the record.
Okay, the record is gonna be this. What I'm trying to tell you is, I'm asking for a motion if you wanna go forth with this. We've gone back and forth now.
That was a
And
motion
we're
and
not
second
gonna
already
continue
on
to
the
keep
floor.
going. Excuse me?
I thought it was a motion
But I'm
and second
trying to
already
get it
on
out,
the
trustee,
floor.
if you let me finish. If you let me finish, trustee, I'm gonna finish my statement. Every time you talk and I say something, then you tell me I'm out of order.
I haven't said you was
I-
out of
but-
order
but-
one
but you're
time this
talking-
evening.
but you're
No,
talking
don't even
while
start
I'm
with
talking.
me. I said, you said
I'm
something, I
talking
said
again.
motion
You're
and
talking
motion
again.
of order.
I'm trying to explain.
Okay, well, I didn't say all that. That somebody else
But you're
said that. I
talking when
did
I'm
not
talking,
say all that.
trustee.
Don't say I
But you're
said
still
stuff.
talking when I'm talking.
We wasting time. There's a
But
motion
you're
and
still
second. Jesus.
Rumble room starts at 9.
Well, you should've.
So anyway, only thing I'm saying is, okay, you want to move forward with this? You know, that's what you want to do, fine. Basically what it is, you're getting this company to come in and do the forensic audit for 2 years. That's basically what I've gotten out of it. I haven't heard anything else, and if there were some agreements made, there's nothing in writing. Only thing I was asking is, the reason why I was asking if you wanted to wait so we can get an explanation from the person that said something, and if that person was supposed to be here, it should have been told that that person needed to be here. I didn't hear anything that person needed to be here. I didn't even know that that person was even questioned to be here. I saw this, they asked for a special meeting, and we went with that. So.
Well, let me ask you this, because there are questions. Maybe we need the interim finance director, maybe we need to have a special meeting and go over all this so it's clear.
That's all, trustee, that's all I was asking.
I'm just asking.
That's all I was asking, because there's just too many
You-
questions and no one to answer them, and we're just assuming, you know, so if this person needs to be here, this is This is important. You're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars.
I understand what you're saying.
So I think we should, I'll ask the question that, okay, I'll ask the person that made the motion if they would like to rescind their motion.
No.
So, so if you don't want to rescind them, okay. Okay, no, there's a motion on the floor. But there's.
But somebody seconded that.
I was simply asking a question of the board.
Yes.
That's all I'm
Yes,
asking.
and you're right. You asked if they would like to table. I asked.
No, I didn't say
In order to
table.
table, to rescind the motion. So I asked that question of the board with the person that made the motion, like to rescind their motion. And you said no.
Right.
Okay. No, the question's over with. I'm call for the vote. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Bell.
At the advice of the treasurer last week out there, yes.
Trustee Brewer.
Yes.
Trustee Grant.
No.
Trustee Jazinski. Yes. Trustee Todd.
Yes.
Trustee Williams.
At the advice of the interim finance director, and the fact that we did not take a vote, we actually discussed things in depth with the finance director and at many committee meetings, I say that we approve this resolution, yes.
You didn't say that? Motion carried. Public comment. I'll take all comments in regards to this meeting and this meeting only. All the questions be directed to me, and after it's, I'm sorry, on the agenda items of this particular meeting only. And I'll answer the question at the end. Please state your name.
Catherine Betcher. Okay. I understand that the forensic audit is the first step to finding out if funds were misappropriated and find out where the money is gone. What I would like to know is, are we able to get the money back if it is found that they were misappropriated? And if so, how do we go about doing that? I mean, are we prepared to prosecute whoever has misappropriated the funds, whether they be present trustees and mayor or past trustees and mayor? I know Dixon had this big thing and they were able to sell property to get their money back. What are we going to be able to do to get our money back? You know, I mean, I just would like to know what our resources are going to be at this point. I understand we're paying $200,000 to get it, and I hope it's money that's being well spent.
Pat Couch. I'd like to read something that just a reminder of our Sauk Village Code, section 30.33, speaking twice on the same subject. No member shall speak more than twice on the same subject unless by consent of a majority of the corporate authorities present. Keep that in mind. Forensic audit, we've talked about it for over a year. If the financial director, interim financial director, didn't feel that it was needed, he wouldn't have stood up here at this podium and brought it up. Where you get the money from, that's fine. Get it from the reserve, get it from the line of credit. It needs to be done, or he wouldn't have brought it up in the first place. If there was such a need for that reserve fund to be used for other resources or other items that needed to be done, why wasn't something done with it before now? Now that we need a forensic audit, everybody wants to say, oh no, don't spend that money. Well, that money could have been spent a long time ago if you would have done the things that needed to be done, but you didn't do that. Now, you're gonna sit here and try to pussyfoot around, oh, we don't need a forensic audit right now. You know darn well we do. Stop trying to postpone it. Let's get it done.
Judy Cast here. Almost 2 years ago, I brought up the fact that a forensic audit needed to be done due to the fact that our interim director was let go. It was indicated at that time that there were monies that were not accounted for, and he was being accused of it. And I felt that with a new interim director coming in, that it would be advantageous to have a forensic audit so that either one, if there was anything going on, would not hold all the blame. That was let go. Nobody had anything to say with that. We have money that can't be accounted for. The interim director has said that. We have issues that we're not getting answers for. We need that forensic audit. And for the people that sit here and say we had an audit, why isn't that good enough? Mr. Finch was at a meeting and did explain what the difference is between the forensic audit and a regular audit, and I bought it. Mr. Finch stood here. I stood here last week and I asked. We felt that we were coming to a meeting to see this go through, and it did not. And I asked why, and that I was told that the resolution had to be taken care of first. And I felt that the public should have been notified of that so that we didn't have any weird thoughts. Tonight has been nothing but a shambles of a meeting. We came here tonight to see this passed. We came here tonight, we will back this board 100%. For somebody to sit up there and threaten our board is uncalled for, unprofessional, and totally disgusting. Nobody should conduct themselves up there like that. We're going to get the audit done. We're going to find out what's going on with our money, one way or another. And I resent the fact that any trustee sits up there and talks about residents needing to know when we've been held back for 2 years.
Okay, the word still keeps getting thrown around, but that's okay. That's misappropriation, that's what you feel, that's fine. But the question is still valid. What are you prepared to do when it does happen, or what are you prepared to do when you find nothing? So that's a double-edged sword. If you find some improprieties, are you prepared to go and, because if it is, are you prepared to go and get the money from whatever happened, whoever did it? Or if you find nothing that's worth going after, what do you do? I'm sorry, the village, and we spent this money, but we thought. So that's something that's like I said, double-edged sword. Appreciate the person that quoted the code. And then also, it was just said that the 2 years ago when the person was let go, the person wasn't let go 2 years ago. So I don't know where that came from. But the forensic audit has passed. It will go into effect. I do know that it will cost. It's just that right now, I'm not certain of how it wants to be paid for, and yes, I will, and I'm just letting the trustees and everyone else know I am going to fight for that because I feel that that money, and the reason why it wasn't spent yet, because we were getting, we got interest on the money. We made $16,000 in 1 year on the money that we put into reserve. So, you know, it's something that, to say that we could have spent this a while ago, I don't know about you, but I like to spend the money when, as you get it, to make sure that we don't have any other problems, that we don't have any other emergencies that we're going to take, use that money for. You don't spend everything you have, and then you have an emergency, you try to figure out what you're going to do. So we had to figure out to make sure that we're compliant with paying our taxes, because we had a problem with that at one time before I came into office. So those are the things that why it was held up at the time. This was 2 years ago when we did this. So we wanted to make sure that we weren't going to hold our checkup anymore from the county and from the state. So that being said, I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by trustee Bell and second by trustee Brewer. All in favor?
Aye.
3 minutes and we'll go to the next meeting.